Welcome back, and we're moving into our first conversation for today with representatives of the Belize National Teachers Union. We have with us Adelaida Guerra, who is the first vice president, and Luke Palacio, who is the president. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Let's begin by discussing the present state of affairs. It's a rather fluid and ongoing situation where the Belize National Teachers Union, on behalf of its membership, has taken the position that classes or teachers should return to classes on Monday, January 9th, whereas the Ministry of Education, as well as the managing authorities for the respective schools, have taken a contrary position to say that school and classes should reopen and resume today. Let's begin by where we stand in terms of coming into this new year with that particular problem.
Good morning again, and thank you. Yes, basically what has happened here, the Belizean public is aware that the BNTU, when we went on strike in October, made it absolutely clear that we are prepared to make up the time. The education rules make provisions for 180 school days per annum. It also says that if those days are not made up for whatever reason, that the managing authorities would be the body to recommend to the chief education officer how the time is to be made up. The reverse of that happened. Even while we were on strike, and even after we placed the strike on hold, the Ministry of Education, through the chief education officer, and the minister met with the managing authorities and told them how the time would have been made up, and we objected from that point because the rules are absolutely clear. They insisted. Well, we all know that we also went to the courts to seek an injunction on the declared position of the ministry at the time that they would dock the salaries of our teachers who were on strike. The court upheld and granted us that temporary injunction. That matter is still before the courts. The fact that the teachers' salaries were not docked, and the fact that the education rules make it absolutely clear that teachers are to be on vacation during the month for the Christmas vacation for 3 weeks, 2 weeks for the Easter period, and the month of July. We are saying that our teachers and our students deserve to get their 3 weeks holiday. If the ministry had done the right thing, if the management had done the right thing to consult with the teachers and their representatives if they felt so, because our commitment was to making up the time. We were not granted an opportunity. We were not involved in the discussions. We were not invited to the discussions so that together we could have said, even if it is the way the ministry would have envisaged it, at least there would have been that participation. And I think we would not be at this juncture where we are today. So our position remains that we are to be on holiday until the 9th of January.
Now, from what you have just explained, the issue seems to be one more of principle, based on the fact that the teachers were not engaged in the decision-making process as to when the makeup time would be. Have you had any feedback from your members, the teachers themselves, as to how willing they are at this juncture to be able to sit out from January 3rd and return to work at January 9th?
The matter has been discussed. That's the position we took at a council meeting. That is the position our membership has indicated to us. For us to say if formally we did that, besides the meeting, in other words, with some branches were to be having meetings, but basically the feeling is that we are right, the rules are there, and the more essential thing that must be borne in mind is that if somebody takes you off your vacation, they are to compensate you. The labor laws are clear. We should be on holiday. Why are you forcing us to come back to work, granting compensation for whatever reason because the salaries were not docked? And so if it means that we have to go back to court to get an interpretation on this matter, because you would not take anybody, be it a public officer, be it even somebody at your house, a domestic that you employ. If the labor law says that that person should get 2 weeks vacation, you bring in that person before those 2 weeks are over, you must compensate the person. It's a simple, basic principle. And we are not violating any rules. What punishment can you mete out to me for not coming to work when I should be on my vacation?
Here's a question. This particular situation of when classes should resume, in my view, stands in the middle of an ongoing mediation between the BNTU, the management, and the Ministry of Education. How does, from your perspective, how does this fit into that particular picture? Because to me, from my vantage point, looking from the outside in, it seems to not bode well for the spirit of trying to resolve one standing issue prior to this one. How does that work for you?
And you're very correct, but I'll have the first Vice President respond, because when we had the initial court hearing and the injunction was granted, the Chief Justice did indicate that he would recommend mediation. Coincidentally, I was out for that second court sitting. So Mrs. Guerra was there, so she could give you the details as to how that mediation would have worked, what the details were.
Okay, good morning. On the 16th of December, we went to court to determine whether we were going through with the court system or we were going to go into mediation. And so we decided, the two parties, that is Ministry of Education and BNTU, decided that we are going to take the mediation process. What that means that we are going to sit and discuss and be able to compromise, because you know what mediation is, right? Where the two parties need to compromise. And basically that had to do with the salary deduction, the threat for the salary deduction. That is what the mediation process is about. And so we decided, and so we were given 45 days for the mediation process. And because maybe because of the holidays, we have not started that process. But we are ready to start the process anytime. And I was hoping that when we started that process, even this making up of time would come up in the discussion, because teachers have always been saying that we are willing to make the time. And in the Belize district, I know there was a meeting, some teachers and principals were invited to a meeting where there was a timetable made or presented in which we were going to be making up time. And some schools had already implemented that make up time timetable that had us up until December when school closed in the 16th. So whenever ministry came up with this idea that we have to continue make up time, giving us 4 and 2, because you know there's a 2 for the Easter break, yes, right? So there is some kind of disparity, there is some kind of miscommunication somewhere between ministry and the education, what do you call it, education, EDC, the education. So, but the main thing here that we want to say is that, as what Mr. Palacio mentioned, teachers have not been consulted through their management, because we are always at the end of everything. We just have to do whatever they tell us to do. Yeah. And they don't realize that we as the teachers are the ones who have to do the work. We are the ones who have to do the work. So
now there's a very important element here that I want us to be able to clarify fully, and that is the role of BAPS and the general managers for pre and primary school, I believe, who issued releases. The BNTU is the representative body of teachers who are members in your institution. What is the role of BAPS and the other association that has spoken out in support of the return on January 3rd?
Okay, the Belize Association of Principals of Secondary Schools is the group of principals that are principals either at government or granted secondary schools. Okay. They are not a body that negotiates on behalf of teachers. They are administrators of the institutions. And therefore, as administrators, they have their role to play. And we must point out that most of those principals are members of BNTU. The management of the primary school, the pre and primary schools, is made up of the different managers of schools owned by the respective churches. And so they make up the Association of Primary Schools General Managers. They too are managing authorities because under the church-state system of education, the managers are the ones who manage the school on behalf of the government. In the case of our primary schools, the government pays 100% of their salaries. In the case of the government secondary schools, 100% of their salaries as well. And in the case of the grant-aided secondary schools, we know they contribute 70%. The issue that we need to have our Belizean people as well bear in mind is that there may be this concept in the minds of these managers that because it is the government who pays the salaries, that whatever the government says must be. We keep on reminding them that it is taxpayers' dollars that is paying our teachers, all of our teachers. It's not any money that any minister or any party in government finds and gives to them as a gift or a grant. And they too need to be aware. And we keep on saying to them, you need to be familiar with the rules. The issue here is that we cannot continue to be working in a country where it seems that there is total disregard for rules, because that is what has been playing out. The ministry knows the rules, or should know the rules. The managers should know their rules and their role. The teachers, we insist every time, know your rules, so that when we speak, we're speaking from that vantage point.
Now, I'm glad you were able to clarify the difference between these different organizations, and I think it is essential to be able to differentiate them simply because we need to know who represents who. The managing authorities made this decision to return on January 3rd along with the ministry. So we understand that position, but I want to get to BAPS because BAPS is an association of solely principals, as you mentioned, government and non-government institutions. They have spoken out saying that they have decided that they want to return to school on January 3rd. Now, to the outsiders looking in, it may seem that they have the support of their teachers, which means they have the support of some of your members to return to school on January 3rd. Is that the case?
As far as
and what is your reaction to what has been coming out from BAPS as well?
Well, we are totally disappointed with BAPS in that regard. And again, just like we mentioned at the start of the show, they were called in by the minister to a meeting and told this is how you're going to make up the time. So it is not their decision. They tried to make it appear that it is their decision. We were told, the minister called us in and he said, this is what we are recommending, and we want you to agree or show what your response is. And we said to them, it is wrong. The rules are clear. Those principals are employed by the managements of those schools. The managements of those schools, we call them either board of governors or board of trustees. And each of those school boards have a chairperson. They were not all at the meeting with the minister. Again, right now we are trying to work with BAPS because we have, they have issues as well that they would like the union to address. We have this whole issue of the matter of our special proposal 22, so that our teachers and support staff at grant-aided secondary schools could get 100% salary and 100% of their benefits. A number of the principals, a number of the managements, we met with them recently before we went on vacation. They are in agreement that this should be done. But the ministry is also insisting that if that is to be the case, then probably they should become government schools. There are issues, but we cannot continue to have, it will not bode well for a relationship to continue in which when it suits them, they will lean on the BNTU to get certain things done, and then at another time, when it suits them, they lean on the ministry against the union. We cannot just contemplate that, and we need to really try and see how that can be done. The key thing here for us to bear in mind, we are the educators of this country. And if the educators of this country behave in this manner, what do you think our children will emulate? What do you think our children will learn? How and when will we say to our children, you need to stand up when we are not standing up?
What I gather from you, from what has been said so far, is that it seems to be quite a non-participatory process in terms of decisions being made and teachers being on the receiving end and not necessarily being able to sit at the same table to come up with these decisions, policies, etc. What I've also gathered from you, this is my own interpretation of having covered these stories and looking at both sides, is that it has also become quite a political issue. Not in the sense of partisan politics, but in the sense of the way that the education rule, for instance, is being interpreted and the resulting tug of war based on how the rules are being construed to either benefit one side or the other. At the heart of it all, however, are primary school students. I think we lose track of that. When I follow this thing from the beginning, it was a principled position that teachers stood up for something of a national importance. Now it has protracted and students are still hanging in the balance. I hear from you guys that students come first and what have you. Have you as a union sat down and reflected on what it is that needs to be done to be able to also show that responsibility to the students that you serve?
Yes, that is exactly what we are about. We are saying to our students, yes, and we might say, well, we're talking about children who may not understand. The bottom line is we are saying there are rules. Let us follow the rules. Using the children as pawns in this game is not going to cut it. Because at the end of the day, you cannot be abusing people. You cannot be abusing the teachers, because this is what this is coming down to now. You want to abuse the teachers and make this cry of the wolf that the children are suffering. For instance, if our teachers were to become exact, the whole system would collapse. Right now, out of our teachers' salaries, some of these managements get a monthly contribution, financial contribution. If our teachers were to decide to withhold that, what would happen to those managements? Our teachers go the extra mile. It's common knowledge. Mrs. Guerra is a practicing primary school teacher. I am seconded to the union for the time being, but I am also a teacher. The number of hours our teachers spend in preparing our students for exams. They are crying about preparation for exams. Education is not only about preparing for exams. And we have a process in place that every teacher uses. It is so sad, and Mrs. Guerra can attest, there are teachers who cry when their students fail one of these external or exiting exams, be it the PSC or be it the CXC, because of the amount of effort, time, and money that they put into ensuring that they prepare the students well. The ministry comes around one day and criticizes. Our teachers had to be engaged recently during this Christmas break in assisting the churches with their Christmas activities, be it the midnight vigil, be it nativity plays. A number of schools had bazaar the day after school closed, and the teachers were there. So how is it that these managements and these principals have just decided, well, you know what? We are dealing here with modern slavery. Our teachers must do what we say. And then what example? Then you will hear the children or the public talking about why they treat the teacher then so. And they pick them and say, but the teacher did not say anything. The teacher did not do anything. So, in effect then, to answer your question, bottom line is that yes, we are very much concerned about the children, but we have to start to teach them as well that when you grow up, Don't let anybody take advantage of you, but you must also be knowledgeable. You need to be knowledgeable about what governs your employment, and that is what we are about.
Now, I hear what you're saying in terms of the principle of the decision, and I want to pose to you a very realistic situation. We're coming into what is known as the MAGA season here in Belize. People have overextended themselves at Christmas, and while the injunction did allow for teachers to receive their salaries after the deduction in October, or the planned deduction, I should say, there are teachers who are concerned that if they don't go to school starting today, that they may be facing some sort of deduction. What do you tell them this morning as they get ready or don't get ready for school about potentially putting themselves in a very difficult situation come end of the month?
I don't know if we can say it any better. The rules are the rules. The labor laws are there. If the salaries were deducted as they had proposed, then probably they would have a justification, and we would have to say it to our teachers, well, look, you need to go back to work at this time so that this effect is not there. But the salaries were paid to those who went on strike and those who did not go on strike. So how are you going to justify to me now that those persons who are going back to work but did not go on strike will be compensated for going back to work during the holiday period, but those who are on strike, although you did not deduct their salary, based on the court's ruling, they are not going to be compensated? It is just not right. And that is why we're saying, if having gone to court, having the injunction in place, the logical thing for our educational leaders, and I mean the people at the ministry, to have done was to say, look, let us try and resolve this matter while the court case is still in process, and see if by the time it concludes, this matter would have been resolved. Or, after the injunction was granted, the chief education officer, who is the first defendant in the case with the ministry, could have called in the union and said, come, let's sit down and talk. They never gave us that opportunity. So people
you have
are saying that, oh, but the union is trying to be difficult on this. The arbitration, the mediation is there. They could have easily insisted and said, come, let's try and move this process. But all you get is statements and press releases after press releases that are very aggravating. And once you start to back up a people, they will have to put up a defense.
So what you're saying is, outside of the BNTU issuing their release and government and the Ministry of Education issuing their release, there's been no follow-up whatsoever in terms of coming together to find a resolution as to when the makeup time will be.
As far as I know, it hasn't been done.
Not with BNTU as such as the negotiating body for the teachers, right? That has not happened. But as I mentioned before, there was some meeting with some teachers trying to make up. I know
schools met with parents even to decide how to come up with.
Yes. Isn't this a divisive act, so to speak, that they would proceed to meet with some and not meet with others, as opposed to meeting with the entire body itself?
Well, of course, that is our conclusion too, that there is attempt. We said it from the beginning that there would have been attempt at union busting. You mentioned that there are probably political undertones. Individuals, we're human beings, and so people will behave differently. And we have tried as much as we can to be above that fray. We're saying, look, let's deal with the facts of the matter. Let's look at the rules. If the rules are not working and you think you want them changed, then let us sit down. Let us look at what can be put in place so that these types of things don't happen. At the end of the day, though, the bottom line is that the BNTU has done what no other organization in this country has done. And I think that is the bone of contention. The government believes that we embarrassed them, which was never our intention, has never been our intention. We had said it from the beginning, the national issues and the things we would have engaged in would have been peaceful, and we have proven that. We have no intention of trying to bring down any government. That is not our role. That is the role of the Belizean people.
Now, what happens in the situation where, and I am aware that some schools had restructured their block time to compensate for some of the meeting their objectives. Some removed their review period and exam period to be able to meet their objectives. What happens in that situation? What has there been any decision as to, you have the additional 6 days and you have this restructured time within classes to be able to make up time? So
I can recall that the last week before this school closed, the 16th, we had visits from members of the ministry who came and questioned us about whether we had completed the curriculum for first term. And in the group that I was, because they took us in groups to find out, and in the group I was present, we did mention that we had completed our first term curriculum. And so we were looking, we are already in second term. The last week of December, the week when school closed, we were in second term already. So I don't see the reason why. We always, teachers as such, it is our nature that we always find a way how to make up the time. That was not the issue, how we were going to make up the time. Because there is issue where we have had different instances where we have made up time. And ministry didn't bother to come in and say, well, this is how you're going to do it. We did it in the different schools, and through your management, your management is informed. And that's what we are saying. Why we were not given the chance to sit down with our principal, and then our principal will liaise with the managements, and then they would be able to present that to the ministry. That is supposed to have been the process. And that is what...
that is what you're saying is set out in the education
rule. That is what... And you could, instead, it went the other way around.
It came the other way. The ministry told the managing authorities and principals, and now the teachers.
And it's unfortunate that the management just accepted it without thinking that, well, the teachers, my teachers, are the ones who will be doing the work.
Now, the perception that some parents have at this point in time is that, not just parents, but the wider public, they hear the issues. You hear entities like BAPS come out and say they want to teach, they want to go into the classroom, they will. The managing authority is saying the same. So the perception is that perhaps the teachers don't want to make up the extra time. They don't want to cut short vacation time. How do you respond to these types of thoughts that people have when they listen to this issue?
Well, again, you're right. If an individual is uninformed, and then you start getting these types of releases or statements being made by entities that people believe are the authority on the matter, I do understand the difficulty that it would pose. But what we at BNTU are saying, we are pointing out the different laws that we are depending on to put up our arguments. And it is to me a very, very simple thing. Involve us in the discussion, and I think we would not be having this type of discussion that we're having today. Our teachers could go back to school today and don't teach. We don't know if that many students will be in school today. We don't know how many teachers will be in school today. And this has been our cry. Because if we had done this thing in the proper manner, probably the make-up time would have been just as has been proposed at this time. But we were not given the opportunity, and that is what we want the Belizean public to really understand.
Let me ask another question here. Notwithstanding all that is taking place at present between the union and all these other stakeholder bodies, what is the outlook for 2017 from the BNTU's perspective in terms of other things that need to be dealt with either on behalf of teachers or the wider Belizean public?
Well, it's a pertinent question, and I must say that in the Prime Minister's New Year's message,
Right.
he repeated and mentioned the things that he's going to do in accordance with our rate demands. Our responsibility now is to monitor those things and assess how it is being done, because we don't want only lip service. If we're going to do it, we stood up for 11 days because we believed in what we were doing, and we don't think we want that you will just come and decide, okay, yes, we will do this, yes, we'll do this, but how? So we will definitely be monitoring that. We know for a fact, despite what is being said, we're headed to some rough economic times. Anybody who wants to bury their head in the sand and don't believe that, then they may not be living in Belize. We're headed for some serious economic times. It is our country. We will have to see how we can participate in any recovery efforts, but not that we will be the sacrificial lambs either, because that is what tends to happen. Those who have been enjoying will continue to enjoy, and those of us who are suffering may be made to suffer even more. And we are saying over and over, this country needs some serious thinking about how we are governed and how we are participate in bringing about the necessary changes, because otherwise it is a dark road ahead. You know.
I wanna bring it before we start to wrap up the whole conversation. What happens today from the union's perspective? Do you visit the schools? Do you meet with membership? Do you simply wait and see how many teachers decided to sit out today, or what is going to be your task for today?
Well, we will be consulting with our
Yeah.
different branch officers to see what the situation is on the ground. And of course, we will also have to consult with our attorneys in terms of whatever may be the outcome that has legal implications. And hopefully, the people in the ministry, if they are listening, will say to their lead attorney, the acting solicitor general, let's try and get this mediation process going.
Yeah. What is the resolution? We know that the salary adjustment issue is currently in a mediation process. What is the resolution to this issue? That the making up of time from the strike? To be contacted by the ministry and they sit down and consult with you.
That's what we want. Let's sit down, let's dialogue and discontinue this tug of war that seems to be going on.
But you know, this whole thing should have been that we should have sat with our managements, with the different managements. The union attempted to meet with the managements to be able to discuss this, but there were times when we only have two of them showing up. There was a time when we only had one manager appearing, so we couldn't have this very good discussion to be able to decide what we are going to do. But that was the process that's supposed to have been followed. We meet with our managements, we represent our teachers, and then we would put there, and then they will be the ones to take that up to ministry. But that didn't happen. So right now, as is, we are hoping that we would be able to sit as BNTU with ministry to be able, and managements are always welcome too, to be able to be there so that we're able to make up that decision as how we are going to make up that time.
That brings up its own question, and this is my final question for this segment. But the last time there was an attempt for the BNTU to meet with the ministry, there was another back and forth over the number of attendees to that particular sit-down. So where do you stand with that? Are you prepared to revisit that scenario again?
We always say our council decides how we proceed. We will advise. And our contention at the time with the minister of dictating who should come to the meeting, that is not how BNTU operates. BNTU is an independent, nationally registered entity. We have our constitution that governs how we operate. Yes, there will be times that we will have to look at it and determine the circumstances where certain things may be applicable, but in that particular circumstance, it was a nationwide strike. And how can you say to me, you bring 5 people to come and speak on behalf of 10 branches? They have their own issues. It would have been good if we would have sat down the council members, because the minister has met with us before, and he continues to dispute it, but they have met with our entire council before, so what would have been so wrong this time around?
So that is what you're asking of the ministry as of today, to have a meeting to decide on making up time the right way, as you say is set out in the education rules,
Yes. Right.
which is consult the teachers to decide how the time will be made up.
The union doesn't have to be present, it's the management with their teachers.
Yeah.
Once that is done, BNTU takes a hands-off approach in that
So your
regard,
fundamental issue-
because we had said from the beginning, our teachers are prepared to make up the time.
So your fundamental issue is that you do not want, as the teacher's representative, the decision as to the makeup time to be dictated to those who will implement, which is the
Exactly,
teachers.
exactly.
That is your fundamental issue. Now, in the exchange that has been taking place, some teachers may not have accepted or understood that to be the message, and they may show up for work today. What happens if today, majority of schools are equipped with teachers? Do you simply let this issue go?
No, well, we would, if they are satisfied, if they are happy going back, we see, because our intention was not to stop anybody from going to school, but we were saying on principle, this is how it should have happened.
Yeah.
If our teachers feel satisfied and they went back to school today, or they are going back to school today, tomorrow and Friday, but we just also need to point out that there were parents who came to us at the time the announcement was made back in October, early November. They said, Mr. Palacio, and they've said to other officers, I've planned my vacation with my children. We've incurred expenses, particularly for those traveling abroad. There were teachers who had planned their vacation to go spend the entire time with their family. And you know, when you change your ticket, at least for these international flights, there's a cost. And all of those things could have been avoided.
Yeah.
So it's not that we were just acting malicious and wanting to create a problem. If this were done, the time when we met, because when we first met with the managers while we were on strike, when they were insisting that we try to call off the strike, they agreed with us that as long as you people are prepared to make up the time, we are prepared to work with you. But the chief education officer apparently decided that it is either her way or no way. And that is what is causing this problem.
And my final question or response that I would like from you is from the parents who are more concerned, who are the most concerned out of all of this. Now, I don't know how many parents monitor the progress of their children and whether they have covered the curriculum or not. But when they hear about these issues that they need to make up time, they may feel that their child is not where they need to be at this time in the year. What do you say to parents who are waking up and saying, you know, yes, you have your principles and your issues with the ministry, but my child needs to be in school to be able to get the education that they pay for or that they contribute towards?
That is true that we could understand the concern of the parents, but if but the making up, this, you see, what we have to understand is that education does not begin in standard 6. It has been a process where the child, from the time the child entered infant 1, that process started. And so the exam that will be covered in standard 6 is what they have gathered up to that point. So basically in standard 6, I had been a standard 6 teacher for a number of years. And at that point, yes, you have certain things that you have to review with them because they might have forgotten.
Yeah.
But it's not like a new thing that they are getting. It's a revision time. And so you prepare them, you help them to remember so that they're able to give them more practice. Also in the secondary school, you have teachers who have to be checking SBAs, you know that, right? And that happens also in your weekends and holiday time. So teachers have never been exact. So if parents are concerned, they're supposed to have been able to liaise with the teacher, with the principal, to be able to say, what is happening at my school? How will you make up with my children? So making up time is not really the issue, right? Not really the issue, but being able to complete that curriculum that will prepare your child to take his PSC or her PSC, and also to be able to be successful in the secondary school situation too. So there shouldn't be so much concern as such, right?
All right.
But we could understand.
Well, we want to say thank you for joining us this morning and being able to share your issues in terms of the makeup time. And of course, we'll keep on following what happens with the mediation process once you guys get to the table.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we are going to be talking about time management for productivity. So stay tuned.